Hey, welcome back to our channel. Today we are going to talk about two common concepts which you hear a lot in system design in future. One is stateful system or stateful server. The other one is stateless system. Okay, so first let's talk about what is stateless system. Okay, so stateless system, from the name you can guess what it is, right? It means there's no state on my server. So when the system or server serves a request, it will only generate output based on the input from the request, rather than relying on any resource or state on the server itself. So in other words, there is no state stored on the server. So whatever input you give to me in the request to the server, I will just use the inputs to generate the output. I will completely rely on the input from the request to calculate something and then return to the client. Okay, so this is the stateless system. On the other hand, we have stateful system, right? So stateful system means when system or the server serves a request, it will not only rely on the input of the request to generate the output, but it will also rely on state stored in the server to generate the output, right? So for stateless system, one simple example is a calculator, right? So let's say you send me a request which is to calculate the sum of two numbers, right? In this case, it's very simple, right? I don't need to rely on any state on my server. I just plus the two numbers you give to me in the request, right? Then I give you back the result. So this is stateless system. For stateful system, one example is, okay, so let's say I want to store some history of my chats, right? So whenever you give me a request, I will store it on my server, okay? And then next time you give me a new chat history, I will store it too. And then in future, you will give me a request which is, oh, please give me back all my previous history of the chats. Then I will just fetch all the historic chats from the server, right? Maybe the server stored it on the disk, or it just stored it in the memory, right? But whatever it stored, wherever they store the data. But anyway, the historic chats are a state on the server itself, right? So when I receive a request which is to give back the historic chats, I actually used the states on the server, right? So this is an example of a stateful system. So let's go to a more real example, okay? So here, let's say I have a mobile app here, okay? So which is a chatbot, okay? So it's a chatbot. So basically I can chat with the system about any product the system has, right? So for example, maybe as a customer, I will ask, oh, what cameras do you have in your inventory, okay? And then the bot will reply, oh, we have maybe XXX, YYY, ZZZ, DDD cameras, right? And then the customer will ask, oh, give me the size of the camera XXX. Then the bot replies, oh, the size is something, okay? And then the customer continue to ask, okay, how about the size? How about the color? Then the bot replies, oh, the color is something, something, something. Okay, so this is a basic chatbot about the inventory of a system, right? So this is a mobile app, let's say. Okay, so how it works? First, it will send a request to our server, right? So this is our server, okay? So here it's a mobile app of the chatbot. And here it is our server, our web server to serve the request, okay? What is a request? Okay, the request is a new message sent to the web server, okay? So basically, for example, when customer asks, okay, what cameras do you have in inventory? Then the request will be sent to the server, and the body of the request is, what cameras do you have in inventory? This is a string, okay? A simple string. And then let's see, we are using the ChatGPT server, okay? We're using ChatGPT service or the OpenAI API to do this kind of bot response, right? So it's a LLM model, let's say. Then our server will send the request to ChatGPT server, okay? Okay, so then ChatGPT server, okay, will respond back to our web server, and our web server will send back the result or the response from the bot to the mobile app of the chatbot. So that's how you can see the messages and how the whole system works, right? So this is the user experience, okay? Now let's talk about what will be a stateless system design, okay? Okay, maybe let's talk about stateful system design. So in this system, if we want to design this system as a stateful system, how it will work, okay? Cool. So as a background, in order to have the full context, or in order to have this whole system work, we must send all the historic conversations to ChatGPT server. So we cannot just send a single message to ChatGPT server, okay? So for example, let's say you just send a single message, which is, how about the color, to ChatGPT server. Then ChatGPT doesn't know the background of the whole conversation, right? What ChatGPT only sees is one message, which is, how about the color? So it doesn't know color about what. So it has no context about the whole conversation, right? So in order to make ChatGPT work, what we usually do in all kinds of systems is we send the whole conversations, send all the historic messages to ChatGPT server. So for example, when customer asks, how about the color? Actually, what we send to ChatGPT server is all the previous messages. So ChatGPT server can understand, oh, we are talking about the camera XXX, and then it can query something and then return the color, okay? So anyway, no matter it's state or stateless system, what we send to ChatGPT is all historic messages, all historic chat messages must be sent to ChatGPT server, okay? So this is a background of the system, okay? Okay, now the problem is, how do we send all the historic chat messages? Where do we store all the historic chat messages, okay? So in a stateful system, we can just store all the messages on the server which process our request, right? So for example, let's say customer sends the first message, which is, what cameras do you have in the inventory? Then, yes, the server will, our web server will send a request to ChatGPT server. And also it stores this chat message, which is, what cameras do you have in inventory? It stores it in the memory. in our web server, okay? It stores it in the server itself. And then when the ChatGPT server sends back a response, which is, oh, we have XX, YYY, ZZZ, and DDD, before it sends back the bot response, we also store it in our memory on the web server, okay? And now the customer asks the next question. So before we send it to ChatGPT server, our web server will also store this chat on our web server memory, okay? And then we also store the bot response. So let's say ChatGPT server response, oh, the size is something. Then we store this bot message on our memory in our web server, okay? So in this case, you can see our web server will store all the historic messages. So the next time, let's say, when the customer sends a message which is, oh, how about the color? Okay, so what we send to the ChatGPT server is all the historic messages to the ChatGPT server. So that's how it works in a stateful system, okay? Now, let's talk about what will be a stateless system for this web server, okay? Oh, before we talk about it, let's talk about what problem will this web server, this stateful system has, okay? So one thing you could think of, yes, if everything works well, there's no disconnect between the mobile app and the web server, there's no disconnect of other internet connections, then this works fine, right? However, there are two cases you should consider. First, okay, what if the connection between the mobile app of the chatbot and the web server disconnects? Okay, so in this case, let's say it disconnects, okay? So here we have the internet or the network disconnects, okay? So in this case, in a reliable system, okay, in a high availability system, the mobile app of the chatbot will connect to a new web server, right? It will transit to a new web server and it will continue to work, okay? However, the problem is that all the historic messages we have was stored on the previous web server, which is this web server, right? So if the mobile app or the chatbot connects to a new web server, let's say it connects to this new web server, okay? This new web server, it doesn't have the previous conversations, doesn't have the previous chat messages, then the whole system will not work anymore, right? Because it doesn't know the historic message, so it can only send the current message to ChatGPT server, right? Then ChatGPT server doesn't know the whole background of the conversation, so it can give very wrong result, right? So this is the first problem of a stateful system. Okay. Another problem is that even we don't have this connection, when the mobile in the modern system, okay, usually there could be multiple web servers, right? So when you send a request, if you don't have a sticky session or something, usually what happens is that the request can randomly go to different web servers because of the load balancing or something. It depends on how our system is designed, right? I will not go into details, but you could know sometimes it can send the request. Okay, the first request could be sent to this web server, and in the next request, it can be sent to this new server, right? So then it's the same problem where the new server will have no historic chat messages, right? So then ChatGPT server will not work, right? So this is a problem of a stateful system, right? So how about stateless system? Okay, so in a stateless system, we don't store all the historic messages in the web server, or we could save it on the web server, but at the same time, we will also save the messages on the mobile app client. Okay, so let's talk about the non-optimized stateless system first. Okay, the non-optimized system works like this. So instead of storing all the historic messages on our web server, we just store it on the client. So when the customer asks a new message, ask a new question, for example, in this case, is how about the color, right? So the client will send all the historic messages to the web server. So in each request of the web server, it has all the historic messages. And then the web server will send all the historic messages and also the new message to the ChatGPT server. And then ChatGPT server responds back, right? And then it responds back to the mobile app, and the mobile app store the new message in the historic messages. So all the historic messages are stored on mobile app. So in this case, you can see the web server only processes the request based on the messages sent in a single request, right? So it doesn't store anything on web server itself. So this is a stateless system, right? But you can see there is a problem, right? Which is, in every request sent to the web server, you send all the historic messages, which means for every request, especially when the conversation becomes very long, every request will become very huge, right? It consumes a lot of bandwidth, so it will cost a lot for the web server, right? And which could increase the response time, maybe. So how can we optimize this? So in this case, we could combine the stateful and the stateless system. So for example, what we could do is, yes, we store the historic messages on both the client and the web server. So yes, so we have two copies. One is on web server and one is on this client, okay? So it just works like the stateful system. If everything is normal, okay, nothing is broken, so everything works just like a stateful system. So the web server, so in every request, you just need to send a single message, which is a new message from the customer to the web server, right? And the web server will combine the new message and all the historic message and then send it to ChatGPT, okay? So it just works like a stateful system. However, when something is wrong, let's say we have a network disconnect between the mobile app and the web server, then in this case, a new web server will be kicked in, and in this case, the client will now connect to the new server, okay? In this new server. Okay, so the client knows, now I'm connecting to this new web server, right? So we know it will not have any historic messages, right? So when it connects to a new server and during the initialization stage, it can just send all the historic messages which is stored on the mobile app to the new web server, okay? So this is our new web server. Okay, so in the connection initialization stage, I send all the historic messages to this new web server. So in this case, this new web server will have all the historic messages. So, and then for future new message which the client sent to it, it could work now, right? Because now it can combine the new message and all the historic messages. So in this system, in this design, you can see we are combining the stateful system and a stateless system design, right? So when there's no error, when the network connection is very good, then it works like a stateful system. And then if there is network disconnect or there is some other error and the new app has to connect to a new web server, then it works like a stateless system, which is I just send all the historic messages from the app to the new web server. So the new web server can have a good state now, right? Okay, so this is our whole session for this stateful and stateless system. So hopefully you are enjoying it. Okay, thank you. So see you next time.